VeeFam, what's up? I'm your host, Mr. Messer, Rob, and I am here with a very, very special guest, the man, the myth, Mr. Andy Krainak, president of VeeFriends. Andy, I can't thank you enough for doing this. This is really amazing to me.
It's my pleasure and privilege and honor, Rob. And what's up, VeeFriends fam, VeeFriends community? Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out with Rob and I.
And to be honest, I've gotten like 3 to 5 friend requests from different Andy Krainaks on Instagram over the last few months. So it's nice to be talking to the real one.
Um,
Yeah, I bet that never gets old. So I want to quickly jump in, real quick, 55-second origin story for your story, pre NFTs for the couple people, specifically my mother, that don't know.
yeah. I have had the privilege and opportunity to work with Gary for almost a decade now, going on 9 years. Before VeeFriends, I was his brand director overseeing the media and content under his Team Gary V, that oversees and manages the distribution and recording and production of all his content. So I did that for almost 9 years. I started off as an intern for him for his book Jab, 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 Right Hook, and then sort of watched VaynerX and VaynerMedia grow and scale from there. So it's been quite the journey. And then we launched together VeeFriends last May.
So, and obviously a really cool story. If you don't have, you've done interviews that are out there floating around on your origin story, but for really quick, because I mean, you're kind of like the story that everybody wants to be when they're reaching out into the Vayner ecosystem of getting that shot and then just really making the most of it. So could you tell maybe the abbreviated story of, the tweet heard around the world will work for free?
I'll go into it. So I first learned of Gary before he was really operating VaynerMedia. He was a wine guy. He was doing Wine Library TV. I went to college at Virginia Tech. At Virginia Tech, there's a wine course called World Regions of Wine. And part of the curriculum, I actually had to go home, log into Virginia Tech's Blackboard system where you take online quizzes and track your course performance. I took quizzes of Gary's Wine Library TV videos. So that's how I first followed him. And, at the time, I wasn't that big of a wine drinker and wasn't and am not a Jets fan. So nothing really spoke to me about Gary, like, I really like this guy, I'm going to follow him. But I ended up following him. And then by way of that, I started seeing him in a few years' time, really starting to talk about social media marketing, and that Facebook was a really big deal, and to chase your passions because you might be able to monetize the things that you really want to talk about, whether it's Smurfs or Elmos or beer. And I thought he was right, and I thought he was really adept, and I didn't think anyone was really communicating in such a relevant and contemporary way about the innovations that were happening in communications across digital, specifically with Twitter and Facebook at that time. I was entrepreneurial. After I graduated college, I taught English abroad in Thailand, actually, and then I coached basketball in China, and I started meeting more digital nomads, digital entrepreneurs, people making money online. So I came home motivated, inspired on what it might be to create my own business. Quickly learned that I had a lot to learn, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I got some inspiration of like, hey, who's someone that I might want to work for that I could really learn from, that I could trust, build rapport with, and then I can go build my $1 billion business. And I came across Gary's content. Honestly, I'll say it's my favorite Gary video ever. It's called A Rant from the Hip, Head, and Heart. He just records a selfie video flying in the air and just rants at the camera. And I love it for a lot of reasons. The first reason is sort of how I just articulated it. He didn't need any videographer. He didn't need the Team Gary V or the D-Rack or anything, which I think can eliminate excuses for a lot of aspiring content creators. He literally just hit record and started talking. Now, not everyone has the communication skills and passion and enthusiasm and charisma that Gary has, but I watched that video and he basically just goes on to talk about like his ambitions and his drive, and he's very authentic. I'm always curious when I meet and interact with the VeeFriends community, but also just like in general, people who may know of Gary, what they think of him. What do they think his skill sets are, like what he's like, and they always ask me too, like, what's it like really working for him? But one thing that generally a lot of people will say is that he's so authentic and that they're attracted by his authenticity. And within that, that resonated with me when I watched that video because I could tell that he was a real entrepreneur based on the success that he had with Wine Library and what he was doing with VaynerMedia. And he had a bright future being ahead of the curve. So I had watched that video, and a couple of days later, he tweeted in the morning, "What can I do for you?" And someone had responded back like, "Hey, Gary, I'm hungry." And then 15 minutes later, I just looked back at that thread because I was just curious to see what the engagement was looking like. And the guy had responded like, "Holy shit." And he took a photo of a cheeseburger sitting outside his apartment doorstep. And I took that as a like, man, Gary, this dude really responds and engages with people. And something just struck a chord. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take a shot. And I responded to that tweet, a chance to work for free. And I didn't really have any expectations of what was responded. I was like, let me just write this. Responded to the tweet. 5 seconds later, he asked me to expand. And I responded back, I just want a chance to prove myself. I'm young, hungry, ambitious. I just want to get my foot in the door. And then he told me to email him. I emailed him. That day, I'm through the roof. I'm like, Gary responded to my tweet. I think it's all going to happen. After a week, I didn't get a response. And I thought that was it. I wrote it off. I'm like, I'm not going to go work for Gary Vee. I'm not going to New York City. And then 3 months later, he actually responded to my email and asked if I would be interested in joining his team as a book intern. I immediately responded. I'm like, yes, I'll live in New York City. My brother was there. So that's sort of how I got my foot into the door at Vayner. It was maybe 100 people at the time. Vayner now is over 1,000 people, global agency in London, Singapore, LA, Mexico City. So there's been a lot of growth. Facebook ads haven't existed yet. So I've really been at the center of Web 2 in the birth and growth of it. And now I've had the fortune to try and see what the future of the internet holds with Web 3.
Amazing story. And it's, for the V universe, it's well known, your story, but it's what kind of everyone aspires to be. But it's one thing getting in the door, and then it's another thing executing. So real quick on the jab, right hook. I know you responded as the book, you spoke as the book. Was that you just in your creative self, or were you instructed to do that?
Man, this is fun. I can tell you've done your homework. That's exactly right. So first day, second day came in, and they were trying to figure out like what my day-to-day would be like to really bring value to the book and the marketing of the book. Nate Schroeder, who ended up being co-founder for Empathy Wines, was my boss. And he was like, hey, we started this book Twitter account, jab, right hook, the book. Why don't you start manning the Twitter account? So then I would start just like retweeting people occasionally, like trying to tweet out some snippets from the book. And then Gary was like, actually, I want you to jump in on the conversations of anyone who tweets me. And I didn't have much direction. And in hindsight, I've realized that this was actually a skill set I had. But so I just started to do that. Rob would tweet, hey, Gary, thanks so much for your message. Like, happy Tuesday. And then I would see Rob tweeted Gary, and I would click Rob's profile, and I would try to learn a little bit more about who Rob is. Okay, he lives in Idaho. Okay, he has a podcast. Okay, he likes the Colts and is a huge Peyton Manning fan. And I would do that to develop the context of how I might best respond to Rob. Hey, Rob, it's me, jab, right hook the book. Hope everything's well in Wisconsin. I know the Colts have a big game tomorrow. Good luck. And Amazing. Then, of course, Rob or whoever else would respond, holy shit, Gary Vee's book just tweeted at me. And this, mind you, it was innovative, and I think it would still be innovative today. This was in 2013.
Yeah.
There are not many books that are tweeting at people in that contextual, thoughtful manner. So it resonated. And then Gary saw my work and was impressed. He was like, wow, this is like really good shit. And at the time, I didn't really think anything of it. I'm like, I'm just tweeting people. Like, what do you mean?
Right.
But after spending more and more time in the space of community management and digital management and fostering communities online, I realized that it really is a skill set. You know, I think so often people go to the screens and they want to market and promote and sell and push, but they don't realize that social media is social and that behind every profile is actual human. And to engage people in like a meaningful, just like you would in real life, is really the thoughtful and best approach to community management or management of any content on a social platform. And that's something that came natural to me. And I've learned that that's a real skill set for anyone who I think would be a strong community manager.
And now that you're saying it out loud and I'm thinking about it in a different way, it's like, here's a guy that built his whole career on the back of Twitter. Well, one of the big pillars. And now like I'm running his Twitter for like this huge book. So did you feel a sense of pressure, or was it just kind of like, I'm just tweeting, I'm just doing my thing?
For sure. Well, the pressure was probably in the fact that I was responding to him and his audience. So I know that he was like, talk about getting evaluated. I'm getting evaluated
Right.
almost every tweet, you know? So like I'm thinking about punctuation, all that stuff. But once you get the rapport and rhythm, you just go, you know? And I was so eager to prove myself. I mean, I was an intern. Minimum wage at that time was $7.25. So that's another little like back in my day, I can say to some of them now, which is fun. But really, I just try to maximize the opportunity and learn as much as I possibly could, and really harness a skill set that I think I could apply to Gary, to his brand, to VaynerX, or in any other future business opportunity that might come my way.
Amazing. And I wanna scoot through these years to get to VeeFriends, but I don't want the
I
audience
love
to
it.
lose sight that like we're talking like on May 5th, 2020, you tweeted, I've been cooking an FB ads manager since 2013. Like that's a long time to be running uh, Gary's social, and to work your way up from a guy that allegedly, I don't mean to throw you under the bus, but allegedly wore a suit to his first day at Vayner when everyone knows Vayner's culture. So I'm sure that's an amazing story that still lives on. I don't know if you wanted me to throw that out there, but I thought it was amazing.
Oh, I mean, I'll tell you now. It's like a lot of young adults, college grads, people that come to New York City for their first job do so because they want to be in the city more so than anything. Like they're drawn to the excitement, energy, vibrance of New York and being in the Mecca. To me, I had no interest to be in New York City. I wanted to be a part of building big businesses and on the frontier of technology.
Mm.
Whether that was in New York or Boston, I was indifferent. So I didn't know much about New York, to say in a short way. And I wanted to make a good impression. So I showed up to VaynerMedia's office in a suit my first day. I'm greeted by the office manager who's wearing flip flops and shorts and a tank.
I
Everyone in
mean,
the
it's a
office.
sensible thing to do.
Yeah, everyone in the office is super casual. And I stuck out like a sore thumb. I'm like, okay, I wonder how this is going to go.
So, I people that are just getting into, and we know that VeeFriends is a juggernaut, and we're onboarding people, and Gary's reach is an infinite amount more than it was way back then. But I want people to realize how long that Andy's been in this picture behind the scenes, doing this. It was funny. They have those throwbacks, and they did on the audio experience, and they had Ask Gary V episode 118, where he kind of puts you on the spot, like, hey, this is Andy, like a bunch of people aren't here, he's not in front of the camera that much, and Papa V, Sasha, was on, and he's like, oh, Andy, the one that made you famous. And then Gary like laughs it off and says, no, like, I made Andy famous. But if you kind of reverse engineer that and really put the microscope under it, like, you're the man behind the Facebook magic, which kind of started it all. So, and I know you're a super humble guy, and we don't need to go down this, but I just want people to understand, like, you weren't just given a job as president of VeeFriends out of nowhere. So I just want to put that out there.
No, I mean, it was timing is fascinating, and I think timing impacts a lot. And there's a lot of quotes about like you need to be in the right place at the right time, but there's a lot of things that you can do to put yourself to be in that place. I was in a point at the end of 2020 where I wanted to take on more opportunities and responsibilities. And Gary and I were actually, and we had talked, Gary's spoken about this concept that he had called workplace warriors, which just before COVID, we were actually working on a deal to do something like I'm holding up this little vinyl toy that would be little mementos, inspiration to tchotchkes to put on your desk in the workplace. It wasn't, we didn't think about Gratitude Gorilla or Flex and Fox or anything like that. We just thought of like attributes or traits around a character that you could put on your desk. COVID happened, all those conversations died. I, at the same time, was thinking about like what is the next step in my career outside of being the director for Gary's content. And so him and I had a conversation, and we had come to an agreement that I would do something different by year's end in 2021. I was like, cool, let's do that. Whether we start a new company, we do Workplace Warriors, we do sneakers, something was going to happen. And then honestly, maybe 2 months later, he texted me. He was like, I need you to start learning everything you can about NFTs and Web3. And based on his focus, as I think people who know and watch Gary, he's like a cultural anthropologist is how I describe him in a lot of ways. Like he really, really is dangerous on a lot of topics because he just reads and consumes so much comments and content around different topics of culture. But he was so singularly focused on Web3 in a way that I had never seen him focused on anything. And that was enough of a signal to me personally, be like, okay, something's happening here. And whether it all blows up and it all fails or it becomes the future of the internet, I saw it as a win-win opportunity to learn and have exposure to something potentially really big.
Amazing. And it's such an interesting point in time. So it sounds like it ended 2020, you're kind of looking for the change, you're having those conversations. And then, if you're in his content, like a lot of the listeners are that listen to this, Gary, he went in that holiday, like, I'm just going to research NFTs for 60 hours. And he came out on the other side, like, okay, I'm doing this and you're my guy. Let's go to that conversation. Do you have any idea what an NFT is here? Or it's just, or is Gary the one that's introducing you to it?
I think we can all play through in our head like our journey of trying to contextualize and understand the components of what is an NFT. There's trying to understand blockchain technology, current NFTs, why the value of NFTs exists. Before Gary had really, really gone in, there was the bubbling and emergence of Dapper Labs and what they're doing with So Rare and the digital sports card NFTs with the NBA, which I thought was interesting. But I didn't see the big connection because I was at the time collecting physical basketball cards, and that was my remit. And I'm like, I'm not going to get into the NFTs for sports cards. But then by January, when Gary was texting me like, hey, you should really check out NFTs, I literally just started watching every podcast I could. Bankless was more like DeFi, but I really like Bankless, and I still like Bankless to learn about like the state of DeFi and cryptocurrency. And then outside of that, trying to study the OG projects of CryptoKitties and CryptoPunks and how things have evolved from there. And it's a fascinating journey. And I still think people, it's hard to contextualize or grasp just how early we are within the space of Web3. Like I think some of the words, like NFTs itself, I don't know how the longevity of that word. I struggle to imagine that in 5 years' time we're going to be saying NFT to describe digital goods or digital assets. And I think all of these things will play out over time.
I agree. So he comes up with this proposal, and are you in right away? Do you have to think about it? And like, because the sneaker thing's on your mind, like what was your level of being in? Or you just kind of have that much conviction in him, you just said, let's go?
More the latter. I was in, and I didn't need to iron out like, okay, this is what it's going to look like. This is, or ask him further questions on it. He's like, I want to do this. I want to do it with you. So let's go.
Amazing. So I think one of the seldom talked about, not well documented times of this whole journey in the early days is Gary clears the schedule and you guys all go to some tropical place and hunker down and plan this thing. Could you, I mean, without being respecting the
Yeah.
process, but I would love to hear about that moment, that week or that few days, whatever it was,
Yeah. So
and how this all came to be.
it had been brewing for a while. Like we had multiple calls about like high level concepts of what would an NFT project be that Gary created. You know, of course, Gary's on the call. He's spearheading it. And, for the most part, he's asking questions from other developers and engineers and people that have been in the space of like, could I do this, or why not, or how do I think about that, or what's possible. And then shortly thereafter, we had time scheduled on the calendar where we were all going to go fly out to California for a week and work on this NFT project. And aside from that, no one had really any idea of what we were going to do and how we were going to do it, other than we were there to build, brainstorm concept, and lay out the game plan for what would become VeeFriends. At that point in time, I'm pretty sure we had locked in VeeFriends, though. I had bought VeeFriends.com and done some due diligence there. But aside that, it was really fundamental work that we needed to do. And then, you know, we took the first couple of days to outline what Gary's thesis was on the value of a VeeFriend NFT, which at its core was a ticket to VCon. You know, and then we started working on the pricing. Okay, what is a comparative price for a ticket to VCon against some other business, entrepreneur, popular culture, entertainment concerts like Coachella, South by Southwest, Davos. And that's how we came up with the floor price of $2,000 for a VeeFriends NFT on Mint. And of course, there's a reverse Dutch auction. But when the Dutch auction ended, the floor price of a VeeFriends NFT, core VeeFriends NFT, was $2,000. So we got there, and then we started brainstorming what activities does Gary like to do that he would want to spend his time on with the community.
That must have been a fun.
We sort of did math around how much time was he actually allocating to do these ping pong kalongs and basketball butterflies and FaceTime flies and keynote koalas. And thereafter, we sort of had the outline framework of the token supply and the pricing of the tokens. Now, the pricing of the tokens became a real difficult task because ETH kept on going up in price.
Yeah.
So we had like basically an Excel sheet that had pegged the current price of ETH and the implications of that on how we're actually going to start the Dutch auction pricing. So that got a little hectic and complicated as the launch was getting postponed and things of that nature. But after laying out the framework, he started drawing. You know, that took up the rest of the time. We had permanent marker, the sheets, our organizational file system, and a long list of characteristics and traits that Gary had wrote down and said for us to capture. And then we would just throw it out, and he was like, "No, I don't like that. Yes, I like that." And then he would just go to work drawing and scrapping it up, throwing it down, rewriting it, redrawing the character.
So who's there? It's you, Gary, D-Rock, I'm sure.
D-Rock was there recording. It was a group of like 6 individuals, all of which have been close to Gary for a long time. His former admin, Tyler Schmidt, Phil Toronto, who's oversees Vayner Fund and has done a lot of investment work with Gary through the years.
So the real crew, no outside contracted NFT people at this point. Okay. Or Web3 people. That's amazing. So he's drawing, and are you guys kind of ideating like this could be a good character, like the Black Cat, for instance? Like, are you going through this kind of stuff, or is it just characters and doing the access and tokens?
Gary, it's for the most part, you know, Gary's as creative an individual as I've ever worked with. You know, like I'll give him ideas, concepts to then for him to be able to make it his way or do it his own. Every character he decided to come up with. You know, like if I said Creative Coyote, he'd be like, fuck Creative Coyote. But like he would think about like clearly we're gonna have a creative character.
Right.
You know, and that's when he's like, I want to do crab. And then he would think about what does creative crab look like? Does he like creative crab? Maybe he did do creative coyote and I like look back at it when we were reviewing everything and like I want to do this character instead.
That's fun. And it's especially fun because I'm looking right behind you. You have that original Patient Pig sketch, which I'm pretty sure was the first kind of doodle that was leaked, not leaked, but posted during that time.
Before we took the trip for the week-long, you know, launch phase of VeeFriends, concepting phase, he had started to draw a little bit in what we call alpha drawings. One of the alphas, he wrote empathetic elephant and drew a little elephant on a postcard or an index card, and that's actually one of the drawings that auctioned at Christie's last fall. So there's the alpha drawings, and that's how long a little bit on the process of, rather his process of the concepting night edition he was. He knew it was going to be alliteration. He knew it was predominantly going to be animals, and it was going to be tied to these characteristics and traits.
And it's crazy what we're talking about, how it's only, it feels like an eternity in Web3 time, but, we're talking, I don't even know, 18, 19 months ago.
We literally have these characters in Toys R Us and besides Macy's right now.
Fascinating. So somewhere in the vault, in the archives, is all of this footage from this week.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's got to be gold in there, especially as this kind of gets more seasoned and characters get developed, collabs break and so forth. So series 1 launch, you guys had that target date of 5/5, gets pushed back. It was fun. The other day I had Cam on the podcast and we had a good chat about the early days. So you get a small from going back to your roots, a real OG core team, and you guys just start building. And I have to think it's just a real interesting dynamic because you're doing this, you're building this thing, you're putting it out really quickly, but everyone's kind of learning as they go. It must have been a very, very hands-on process, unlike anything else. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, it was, unlike anything else, I was still new to it. We were still learning every day. While we were building it, we were trying to keep up with the pace and timing. Timing was really important. Gary had marketed and promoted 5/5, and we were trying to do everything we possibly could to make sure that we could hit that date. And the mint was complex. It wasn't, by that summer, everyone was used to seeing like a NFT mint site, connection wallet, you just hit mint, and away you go. That's not what VeeFriends was. VeeFriends was a token directory of every token we had available for sale, all with a reverse timed Dutch auction, whereby you could scroll through, select which character, and then if you wanted to, you could hit mint. So there's a lot of dynamics of basically building a search engine referencing our token contract, which to my knowledge, I've never seen another project have that scale, like pick which 10,255 NFT you wanted to.
No, I haven't. And, it's just one of the many ways that you guys innovated kind of through, and we'll get to a bunch of it down the road, but just, it started you on the unique track that this project is. So you get called in to everyone's hands on, everyone's kind of doing everything. It sounds like your official title is president of VeeFriends. What does the president of VeeFriends do? What is your job?
Maintain the vision and operations of this company. I don't think of VeeFriends as an NFT project. We're an intellectual property business and company focused on events and entertainment and content. and we just so happened to have first launched our IP as NFTs. We're aside from that, I think the real task and challenge I have is to move as quickly as possible to keep up with the times and demand and growing community, while also trying to operate and staff and scale our internal capabilities to meet those demands. VCon, we were about 15 full-time employees. We've more than doubled in size since then, which is great. So it's really fun. It's challenging, and I'm just excited about the continued growth.
And I like you've said before that you see it as a holding company with 268 unique companies, which is, I think, a really cool way and accurate to look at it. Obviously, a lot's happened, but sticking on the bigger picture of your role per se, is there well, let me frame it this way. So Gary, obviously very forthright with his 12 and a half, how candor was a struggle for him. I'm curious, what was, I don't know if it changed from the beginning of VeeFriends to where you are now, but I was just wondering if you had a half that you had to really exercise and strengthen in your ability to lead and exercise the vision and the staff and operate and all that.
That's a really good question. I think it's probably putting more trust in others. The reason why VeeFriends was kept to the size that it was for a while was because I really had the utmost trust in the 13 people around me, which created for a lot of speed, which was really beneficial. But in order to scale and do the amount of work that you need to do, you need to put trust in others and allow them to do the work. So I feel like it's that to really, scale and grow and operate a company, you need to have other leaders to be able to get things done that you can't get done. And it's coming to reality with if you can get it to a 10, do you feel okay if that person being comfortable with that person's 7?
And it sounds like, I mean, from what I've seen, you guys in your scaling, it's coming to light, with the events team, a head of collectability or
Yeah.
merch and things like that. So it's really coming. Amazing. I appreciate your transparency as well. So, the chapters that follow, we could do 5 hours on each one, but I really just want to skate through for time. So book games, I know I'm beating a dead horse, but it blows my mind that it hasn't even been a year that book games has been in the ecosystem. The first time you heard the word book games, when was it? Where was it? Was it just a bomb that Gary dropped one day? Like, we're doing this.
I mean, essentially, I wasn't so connected to his content and his content team anymore. I'm running VeeFriends, 100% focused only on VeeFriends. I have more than enough to focus on. Promoting his book wasn't one of them, and then as the day for promotion of his book was coming, I got filled in with Team Gary and Gary that we're doing an NFT with it. I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes. Demand was unprecedented, and then we run the math after, the amount of books we sold in 24 hours is unprecedented.
Sure.
And book games in general, I think is one of the most remarkable executions in marketing, book or otherwise. To be able to do what we did with marketing the book, collectively Gary, his content team, and VeeFriends, and then issue NFTs on the back end of purchasing 12 books, and to have that NFT market do what it's been doing over the course of the last not even 12 months is, again, remarkable. And I think it was, in order to get book games live in the time that we needed, it was a full court press. There's probably 20 people working 5 days a week on putting together the system and mechanics of how we could create book games on a gasless blockchain in a marketplace that most people haven't heard of. to then also create other inherent value for those NFTs outside of just the single ownership of them.
And was it a similar kind of blank canvas whiteboard session as far as ideating the whole ecosystem and what would be tied to what and the exchange and the whole thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. It starts with again, just like with the VeeFriends, it starts with the black and white map. What are your frameworks? How many tokens do you have? How are you dividing up the tokens? All that, and then you can have the fun part, which is now what do you fill it with? What are the ideas? What are the concepts? What are the characters? What are the artwork? What are the mechanics for evolutions and different dynamics?
And boy, like, did it come on strong? Like,
Yeah,
was that an event when people were like, "All right, what is this?" There's 100,000. Like, I remember not having any gas was revolutionary. It just felt like everyone won the lottery. Plus, we're having this. I mean, as a community, that was one of the, if I'm counting them on one hand, one of the most like incredible nights uh, there when it dropped and people were looking at the flips and like, holy shit, like the quality just went for this. Someone fat fingered this. Like it was wild,
yeah.
absolutely wild. So, I mean, hats off to you guys for pulling that off. Which brings us to a few months later, Series Two. Was the whole concept of Series One being the Gary Doodles, Series Two more polished version of what the public's gonna see? Was that always kind of the the plan?
At a high level, yeah. Like series one, Gary's drawing being, the genesis, the inaugural version of that character. Aside from that, we didn't necessarily know, May 2021, when and how they would come to life, but we knew that they would be evolving outside of Gary's original artwork for sure.
So, this was a really, really special time because I mean, there's been education that you guys embedded just really tremendously throughout the every project to this point. V1 obviously like starting with what is an NFT, how to make a MetaMask wallet, and then the layer two stuff with Immutable. And now here comes these massive education sessions, which I think are very underrated. And you guys, I don't know how many you ran, but I think they were well attended and they helped bring in a lot of people. And so hats off to you for that. But more importantly, and I don't think I said this to Cam, and I don't think this gets said enough. The friends list and executing that. Um, so it people that were really like me, like everyone listening to this, like the people going crazy in Discord when Gary's giving away a Go Rare robot. Those people didn't get botted out when it comes time to the public mint. So talk to us about just from what you can remember. I'm sure it was chaos, but the origin of the friends list.
I mean, it's connected to book games, right? Like we knew, one, that book games are forever. Two, that they were going to be a unique opportunity to provide value to the holders of those tokens. And once we, allocated, we're going to take care of Series 1 holders. Now let's try to take care of book games holders in some form or fashion. And like a lot of that with the education, that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of. And it comes most natural to me in my skill set of content creation and distribution across these platforms. Like it was no joke just getting people educated to get Series 1 mint. It's still complicated. Like you got to go to an exchange to get Ethereum, and then you got to get a wallet, and then you got to go to OpenSea. There's a lot of dynamics to learn. And now with book games and the friends list and Series 2, again, we're putting it on a blockchain most people had never heard of. Like if I asked before book games the VeeFriends community, do you know what Immutable is? 80% would say, "What's
No.
that?" Have you
Yep.
ever been to Token Trove? 99% would say no. So we had a lot of education to do with book games, and then we had even more so to do with the dynamics of how Series 2 mint and Friends List would play out. but I think we did it. It's fun, you know. We are doing so much, really. Like the amount of collaborations we've done, book games. Sometimes it's nice to take a step back and think about just how much we've done over the last 12 months. You know.
And it's really fun. I mean, it's got to be. I don't know how often you guys get a chance to sit back and reflect, but it's fun to have these conversations where you start at day zero and kind of work your way forward and
Yeah.
realize how much ground you've covered. So it was always in the plans to not go traditional public mint with V2.
It was always we knew that it was always in the plans because we did do public. We knew we were going to do public, but we also knew we were going to do other versions not public.
Gotcha.
So it was more just thinking about what was the right approach to be able to divide and conquer what could and should be public versus what do we want to reserve for others.
You mentioned collab, and without, I'm not seeking alpha or anything, but could you just give us kind of a ballpark estimate of how many requests or inquiries you get, either outgoing or ingoing, like at any given time? Or
I mean, I don't want to quantify it. I'll just say that it just comes down to a matter of when. You know, like
Hmm.
there's always, whether it's an art supplier or a different blockchain or a different apparel company or hat company or sneaker company or food and beverage company. Um, all of them and a lot of them are interesting opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
It just comes down to when we feel like is the right approach uh, and right time to strike.
And it's unlike any other company in the sense that you have all of these people that are so invested and they're trying to give their ideas and help the cause for for help the greater good. And that's kind of one thing that I see all the time, and I'm like, whoa, like, take it easy. Like, the patient, we get it, like the patient pig barbecue stand, like, that's your
Yeah.
idea, like, I'm sure we'll get it. So do you guys see this kind of thing from the community? Do you take note? You're like, huh, that's a good idea, like, let's put it in the file for a rainy day.
Well, I mean, it's a real Web3 is interesting. You know, I think there's a lot of hyperbole and a lot of contradictions in it. And specific to this, VeeFriends is different than a lot of other NFT projects because we own the IP, and we did that for business purposes. You know, like we feel that like if we really want to have Patient Pig Barbecue or we really want to have uh, VeeFriends collectibles or VeeFriends balloons or blueberries or whatever the case is, you need to have a business team and you need to have central authority and business decision leaders, and it needs to run within the same organization or you're going to be vulnerable to a lot of other issues. Not having direct sources of context, vulnerabilities within the brand and IP itself. So if like a VeeFriends community holder wants to create and own a business with Patient Pig Barbecue, the short answer is like, okay, do you want to apply to work at VeeFriends?
Right.
You know,
That there's so many moving parts. I can't even begin um, to try to figure out the inner workings, but you know, you guys are doing a great job, and I feel like doing exactly all the things that we've talked about from your day one of how you got it in and applying what Gary says, and you're just doing it. Like, I love the brick. Like, you're notorious now for the brick emoji, and it's just like, all right, talk about floor price, like, we're gonna build. All right, we're in a bear, like, all right, we're building. Like,
yeah.
it's just another day at the office. And I really like, and as a fan and a member of the community, I love it. And then as like a person, as someone that's like grinding and building myself, I love it even more, and I just connect to it. So
Thank you.
um
I love that, man. And I just think it's true. Like if you can fall in love with the brick, you're good.
yeah.
You know, everyone always wants to go to tomorrow and like reach for that when all they need to do is focus and reach on like what do they need to achieve today to the best of their ability and do that day in and day out and pick your head up and you might be the president.
I want to, I'm looking at the time here, as we kind of start to wrap this up, I wanted to talk about community. So one of the reasons that pushed me to start this project is, one, I want to be able to, I believe in this project more than anything. And the stories that I'm asking about, the origin stories, I think are going to be amazing to look back at, and even as soon as 5 years. But I'm just as bullish on the community, which is a word that's been thrown around almost carelessly often. What does that word mean to you, community?
Um, it's the livelihood of existence. It's the where you find meaning. Specific to VeeFriends, I think it's the foundation of who we are as a brand and company. And I don't think we ever try to short sight the value of upholding our brand and upholding our community. And I get hit up a lot from people trying to build a Web3, create projects, whether it's a PFP project and they have a big team behind them, or it's just a single artist who's really talented but sees the opportunity at hand of trying to build something with Web3. And the only thing I tell them is, most everything that I could, most everything that I could tell you is black and white that Google can tell you. If you want to create a smart contract, if you want to mint an NFT, there's literally blog posts.
Yep.
The thing that you can't learn about or just understand and press buttons to get done is build a community. That is the magic. That is the 1%. That is the one thing that you can't just pay for. It creates real thought, strategy, care, energy, and time to build a community. And I think like anyone who wants to build a project needs to do the first thing, which is build a community and then build a project. You can build a community around your project, but you need to be focusing on equal parts every day on nurturing, fostering, listening, and developing the community.
Do you feel, and you guys are deep in the community, and I know you guys, there's always people from the team and on spaces and things. Do you guys have a sense of pride when you see hear whatever about some of the initiatives going on in this community?
Absolutely. I mean, and I never try to take it for granted. Not necessarily. I take pride in, or it makes me happy. I saw a community member. She had a tragic thing happen with her father. Her father passed away.
Yeah, Maya Parker.
Devastating, but it made me so happy to see that the community knew that and were supporting her. And that made my heart full a little bit to know that she just had support, and that support was funneling through the VeeFriends community. But aside from that, I just never try to take for granted who the VeeFriends community is at large. And I said that when I was at VCon, that Gary actually, I think, said it on stage, like the hypocrisy of attendees at VCon being dicks to each other, being rude to each other, or disrespectful or impolite would be terrible. And I think that's the exact opposite of what I experienced. And I feel like in general, the VeeFriends community is we actually are kind and we actually are thoughtful and we actually are entrepreneurial and creative and courageous and reflect a lot of these attributes and traits. And I think if we can continue to storytell around these characters with the community that we have behind us, we have a real shot at making an impact, not just within our community, but around with others outside of our community, which, what greater meaning could a business have than that?
I love it. And, one of we could talk about VCon forever. I'm realizing that we didn't, but the one thing that I'd like to tell you is that the one thing that I couldn't believe, the bar was so high from the experience and the people, the level of kindness that from the team all the way down into the community that we're talking about was at an all-time high, exceeded the highest expectations. Just I couldn't believe it. And I think a lot of people saw that, like, they couldn't believe that, like, you and Gary and the D-Rocks and Dustin, whoever it is from the team, like, are just that nice and authentic. And it's like,
It's
meeting like these people that you see on a screen all the time, and you're like, no, that can't be real. Like, no, it is real. And it's that kind of thing that trickles down to, the long tail of it is the community, what you see. So, and hats off to you
Thank you, man.
for being a huge pillar in that.
It means a lot to me, man. Gary is an anomaly of a human. I think if you spend time with him, or even if you just watch him, you can tell the amount of intuition and energy and passion and entrepreneurial DNA that man has is on a different tier than most anyone I've ever met. With that said, though, everyone you just mentioned, and myself included, the reason we act how we act is because it stems from him. When I think about how am I talking with a community member, it's because I've seen Gary take 5 minutes out of his day while he's walking, or when it makes no sense based on his calendar, to talk to Rob because Rob is trying to figure out how to get his sticker business up and running.
Yeah.
And like in just like a real genuine provide value kind of way. And like I just try to live by that ethos, and I think it is how you build a community, and it's deeper than a lot of what I think marketers think it is. It's human connection.
Amazing. I see 3 minutes. If we have time, I just want to do a quick little rapid fire. If you're all right with
Yeah,
that.
it's good. I don't have anything on the back end for now, so we can.
Awesome. So I call it micro macro spitfire. So I'm just going to rattle off some questions, give a macro yes no answer, or get the microscope out and get really detailed as to why you're answering what you are. What character do you need to spend the most time with? Meaning you want the, by osmosis, you want more of that juju.
That's the world would be this character behind me, which is optimistic otter. Me personally, I'll just say patient panda, man. I stay with him every day, but that's the motto. If you can stay patient and work hard, you don't have anything else to worry about.
If someone is just getting into VeeFriends now for the first time, who's one person they need to follow?
Just getting to VeeFriends, one person I need to follow. Myself.
Favorite teacher you've ever had, and why?
Favorite teacher I've ever had and why? Man, Miss Taylor in 6th grade, because she cared about her students and made connections with all of them, and just inspired what I would say the soft skills are.
There was a show that lasted one episode called Interrupted with Gary V. If the show came back and a V friend hosted it, which character would host that show?
Hot shit hornet.
I love that. What's a secret talent that you have that most people don't know?
Secret talent I have that most people. I can speak a little Thai.
Oh, that's right. You are a traveler. What was the favorite place you traveled to?
Probably the two places. So I lived in Thailand for a year, and then I studied abroad in Switzerland, in Riva San Vitale. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. I would say Riva in Switzerland.
Amazing. Where's the VeeFriends bus right now?
The VeeFriends bus right now is probably driving around New York City somewhere. It's no
Oh, so
longer
go.
VeeFriends bus. It's a wrap design on a bus that.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
If something happened where you had to lose all of your social media platforms, but you could only keep one, what would you keep?
Man, Instagram is my phone book. So I'll probably keep Instagram.
Are you bougie hotel or hiking and camping guy?
Depends on the week.
What was your favorite IP as a kid?
I have a lot. Favorite IP as a kid. Depends on the year. I want to give like Power Rangers when I was really young were crazy. I loved the Green Ranger. I remember the Green Ranger went bad. I cried all day. At like pre. I was still preschool, first grade when that happened. Power Rangers, Rugrats. I'm a Harry Potter fan, but not to the level of other Harry Potter fans. So I don't like to say
Got it.
that. But those are the three that come to mind.
Oh man, you're bringing it back. I remember 4 o'clock, 4:30 after school every day. Power Rangers.
It's crazy, yeah.
Your favorite concert you've ever been to?
Favorite concert I've ever been to. It's like it's a lot of ties. My first concert ever was 311 when I was in high school. So that sticks out to me just because it's my first concert ever. There's an artist named Tom Misch who I went to go see with one or two friends a couple years ago in Brooklyn. Incredible artist, and it was a small event with maybe 40 people there, really intimate. And that stands out to me as like a once in a lifetime experience. That was also really special.
All right, I have two more. What was your go-to rap album in high school? What was
Ready?
the anthem?
First Eminem, but I'll say "Ready to Die" by Notorious B.I.G.
Can't go wrong. I was Marshall Mathers LP. That was for
Yeah,
me.
what I would like Marshall Mathers LP, the Eminem show, which I listened to the other day. So good. Um, I that album was really what put me onto hip hop. Like where I was like, rap, hip hop is my music of choice. And it was after that when I really started to be like, okay, now who's like Biggie and who's Tupac, and like I really, really got in the game. And then that's when I codified Biggie as the best rapper ever, and Ready to Die as probably the greatest rap album ever.
Amazing. Usually the last question is if you could ask Gary one question, what would it be? But I'll since you are with him probably all day, every day connected, I will ask if you could ask any member of the community one question off the record, what would it be?
Um, Ask community question. I mean, what can I do for you?
I love that. And that is stemming down from Gary. That is just a notorious thing that has impacted me and changed my life literally from D-Rock doing it and now you doing it in an AMA. Like I can't thank you and the whole team enough. You guys are really doing something special. I'm happy to be a part of it.
Um, Thank you, man. Thank you for the time, Rob. Thank you for inviting me on the show. Um, I got to check out the other episodes now, but I wish you all the best, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Will do. And I will say what's up in Miami in a couple weeks.
Nice. I'm looking forward to Miami. I think it's going to be a great time. Absolutely.
Awesome. I'm pumped. I'll definitely find you and dap it up. Thank you so much, Andy. Wish you the best holiday ever, and we'll talk soon.
You as well. Have a great Thanksgiving. Thanks, Rob.